Hi, Nick. Why do you think that programming is something that should be learnt by doing, perhaps by building projects?
Yeah, I personally think that you can like learn information like regarding programming in other ways, but in terms of effectiveness, I really don't think anything beats going hands-on. And the reason I say that is like at least in my own experience as a developer and then working with other developers, when you're actually doing and building things, you get the sort of the muscle memory of going through the steps. You're going to be getting stuck on things, which sounds kind of funny because like no one likes the hard work getting stuck on things. But I really feel like that's where you're genuinely learning, and it's like these moments where you're getting stuck and going like, I actually don't know how to solve this, and I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. I'm going to look at these different resources. So it's not like you go, okay, well, I'm never going to watch a YouTube video or never going to read a blog post because, Nick and John said you have to learn by doing. Like, no, like you end up going to pick up those resources as you're getting stuck, getting unblocked. But you kind of get that muscle memory. And then I think the other part is that you get a little bit more like practical application of what's going on. So, like I said, I don't want to say that like there aren't other ways that you can go learning, but I think that if you're say following like reading through a book or just a tutorial on something and you're like, I can see how these things fit together, that the scenario that you're looking at may not even be like a real thing. It might be like talking about a programming language feature, and that's cool, that's nice, but it's not how did I go build something that is like more real in terms of like what you might do at work. So instead of having these like more theoretical examples, you have something that's like more realistic. So I think a bunch of those factors tied together make it a really good vehicle for learning.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the one true way, but equally, I don't think you can learn without doing it. I like to equate it to swimming or painting. You can learn a bit about swimming. I'm sure you can read a book or watch a video to improve your technique, but you will never learn to swim if you don't get in the water and swim. You will never become a painter if you don't pick up a paintbrush and paint. So it's an iterative process, I think. Read just enough of the book or the tutorial or watch just another video to get started and start. And as you say, that stumbling blocks, when you type the code in, you mistype something or you didn't quite copy it correctly, you get that compiler error or you get that exception. Reading that error message or that stack trace, figuring out what went wrong, that's part of the skill. That's part of the skill of being able to build, because it's what you're going to get in real life, isn't it? So if you just watch your tutorial where we've edited out all the times when we messed up and did that, and you just see it perfectly go through, you don't see all those in-between steps, which are actually the key things you learn that enable you to do it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So as you've been learning, as you've been through your career, what are the projects that you've built that have really taught you something?
Yeah, I think, ironically, I have this project that I started literally like 20 plus years ago. And so just as a very, very brief history, when I first figured out that I could write code and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened. I really like role-playing games. If I had all the time in the world, I would just play video games because I love video games. But I like role-playing games, so like fantasy role-playing games. You're a wizard or a knight or something.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first things that I put together was, and I remember being in my computer lab at school, and I put together like a text-based role-playing game. Actually, it wasn't even. I guess it was text-based. It was like a WinForms. Like you could click a button and like attack skeletons. There was no graphics. It literally said like skeleton, and you could click a few times. Anyway, I was like, I've made a game. It's a button. And what had happened was that I was like, wait, but I can have different enemies that aren't just skeletons. Or when you're killing the skeletons and you're getting experience and gold now, I'm like, wait a second, we could have equipment. Like, I can make a role-playing game. And so I basically, over 2+ decades, have always gone back to this as a playground. And so this one particular project has been kind of reborn many times. Typical thing of like I take a break from it and go back and I read the code and I'm like, who wrote this? Like, this is the worst code that's ever existed. And instead of being like, I should build on it, like a lot of the time it was like, I'm going to start this thing from scratch. I told myself the very last time I did that, I'm like, no more, like, you're a software engineer, you refactor this thing and whatever. And literally the last time I went looking, I was like, I don't know, man, I think I should probably rewrite it. But I like this project in particular because I think one of the things that gets missed with learning is that if you constantly feel like it's like an uphill battle where you're like, okay, I know I have to go learn about databases, I have to go learn about some tech stack, and you're like, I have to go do it, but like, I'm not really that excited. I feel that there's more resistance. There's just more against you to like be absorbing information. And for me, with a role-playing game, I was like, there isn't a better, more interesting domain for me. So like, give me the lamest technology that I feel like I had to do like XML parsers and JSON parsers, and like, that wasn't exciting. But the fact that I'm like, I need that because I need to go save and load data for my game, like, I gotta go learn that. So that made it really interesting for me, I think, and that's always been a vehicle that I've had.
It's like the classic advice for beginner guitarists. When you start learning to play guitar, it kind of hurts to fret the notes because everyone pushes too tight. So the standard advice to new beginners: put the guitar out on display, somewhere where you can easily reach it and you can pick it up for 1 or 2 minutes and do a bit of practice. If you put it away, it'll get forgotten about and you'll never do it. So yeah, picking those projects that excite you or interest you can be really good. So over the years, as you keep going back to this project, what have been like 2 or 3 key things you've learned by doing it?
Yeah, I think I would love to say it's been that I can design code that never needs to be rewritten. Apparently that's not the case after a couple of decades of doing it. But I honestly think that after having done that a couple of times, one of the big takeaways is like, look, that when you go to rewrite this, you feel like you're starting from scratch. So like, I don't want to do that. I would love to be able to say that the code I wrote 20 years ago is like accruing to something more, and it is in some degree, but like that code doesn't exist anymore because it had to be rewritten. So the next time I go to like touch it again, like, what would I have designed differently, right? So it's made me think about like, when I talk about architectural patterns in software, like everyone will go to like, layered architecture, clean architecture, onion architecture, hexagonal, or like vertical slices. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think that there are aspects to those things where if you like, there's a feature of this type of architecture that I want, like qualities of it that I want. What is it about designing code that gets me that? And I think that's really helped because, yeah, it's a role-playing game. It's not a WinForms button-clicking thing anymore, but I don't think it's ever going to be something that ships, like, and that's totally cool with me because it is this vehicle for massaging code and refactoring. So, like, one of the things for sure is, like, qualities about architecture that allow me to extend. It's personally pushed me in the direction of, like, a lot of data-driven, like, software development. So, for example, if I can extend it just by changing data in a database and not having to write more code for it, I'm like, that's a huge win because that means my code is more stable. That means that if I just want to, I want to double the number of items in my game. Okay, like you're not like writing more if statements to say if item ID equals 2, then, here's the new item. So stuff like that. I would say that refactoring capabilities based on architectural patterns, that's helped a lot. But it was a vehicle for other things early on too, because I think anyone who's tried making a game goes, well, it's cool, but like it would be really cool if I could play with someone else. So I learned about like low-level networking stuff early on. So like building like TCP socket servers and clients, and to be able to communicate. I got to build chat into it too because everyone's going to be playing this, right? So I think like different like lower level things, and I've said this, on social media before, but, we're told often in the real world, like, don't reinvent the wheel because there's other people that have built these pieces before. I wouldn't recommend writing a JSON parser for production from scratch unless that's your business. But, like, I felt like doing those things and, like, kind of going through the steps. How do I write a JSON parser? How do I write, like, a TCP, like, messaging sort of protocol on top of TCP? What does that look like? I feel like there was a lot of those building blocks along the way that taught me a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I've repeated that advice many times myself. If you're doing it professionally, don't reinvent the wheel. Find the thing off the shelf that does it, is well tested, is well proven. And then at the same time, I tell people all the time, it's what coding challenges is. Go and reinvent the wheel. But it's two very different purposes, isn't it? When we're building production software, we want to build on stable foundations. We want to leverage all that work that's gone before us. We're not being paid to reinvent the wheel, but being paid to create value. Whereas when you want to learn, go and reinvent the wheel. Go and figure out how that thing works. Understand the building blocks that you use every day, like Redis or like a network protocol or a parser and so on. On that note, of the coding challenges, which one takes your eyes? If you were starting now looking for a project, which ones would you'd be drawn towards?
Before we started recording, I pulled up the list because I was like, John, I don't think that there's going to be one that's like going to stick. So my face probably just brightened up because I have your page in front of me. But I think there's a couple of categories, and I think that's the other nice thing is that if I said, John, like it's definitely like, I'm just picking one. It's definitely a Discord bot, but like it's not, I wouldn't say a Discord bot because it's Discord, but I would say like a Discord bot because you're going to be integrating with someone else's platform. So I think there's classes of these things, and I just wanted to kind of give you like what I feel like are some good classes. And by the way, it's not like it's just these. I think you can, personally, I think if you're looking through coding challenges and you can group these things and say like, I need more experience kind of in this area, then that's a really helpful way to approach it. But I think writing parsers in general is awesome. So you have a JSON parser in the list. I don't personally care what the format is, but I think going through writing a parser of some sort is going to teach you about state machines. It's going to teach you a whole lot about edge cases and things like that. So I think a JSON parser, XML parser, anything like that would be awesome. I do think that something like I mentioned Discord already, but something where you're integrating with someone else's API, I think is going to be tremendously valuable. I personally think that if you can spend some time with some lower level networking stuff, and what I mean by that is, like I see real-time chat client and server, there's probably a package for any language you can imagine that you go download it and you're like, I got that, man. Like it's one line of code and I can write my own chat thing. But I think write it from like you're getting sockets connected. Is that the best way to go? Like we said, you're not going to, please don't do that for production because there's probably someone else that's done it. But for learning that kind of stuff, I think that's incredibly valuable. And then the other thing, I feel like it would not be, it wouldn't be fair for me to not mention games. And I say games because I think that there, and you could bucket this in a couple ways, but I think something where you're talking about usability of something and actually factoring in a user could be just a whole different take on some of these things. Everything I mentioned so far was like tech, but like you're talking about a game or you're talking about something where a user has to interact with it, I think you start to take on a whole different perspective. Because you have to think about like not only the technology, like asteroids is on here, right? So how are you going to build asteroids? There's going to be some, data structures, algorithms, things that you have to think about there. But also, like, you have a user that's supposed to play that. So, like, what does that feel like to go do that? There's these weird delays when you're pressing the button. Like, you have to think about what that's going to feel like to go integrate that way. So, yeah, I think those are sort of categories that I think would be really helpful for people to look at. And then, of course, if you're navigating different areas of your career, you might say, I have a weakness here. That might be a really good thing to go focus on.
Cool. That's a really great point about the games, Nick. And I think I need to address that now that you've really brought it front and centre in my mind, because the first software I wrote that was widely used by about 1 million people downloaded it, I believe, was a bot for Quake back in 1996.
Oh, no way. So you're a cheater, is what you're saying.
No, not that kind of bot. It was a bot that you could... Back in 1996, we all had slow dial-up modems, so if you were rich and had access to the latest tech, you had a 28.8 modem. But it was, at least here in the UK, it was quite expensive to dial up and play deathmatch. So, if I was lucky as a student, I could afford to spend about an hour online playing deathmatch against other human beings.
Right.
I wanted to play more than that. I was a student, so I was in the pub or I was playing games and occasionally studying. So if I wanted to do more than that, it was almost impossible unless I could get a bunch of people together for a LAN party. And back in those days, your monitor weighed 25 kilos, and getting together with students that didn't have cars was not easy to sort out a LAN party. So I built bots for Quake that could play deathmatch. So the bot I built was called the Oak, modelled off Arnie, and it ran around looking like Arnie, sounding like him, and it played deathmatch against with you. And you're totally right. I learned a lot from that. It was applying algorithms, so things like Dijkstra, to make it navigate this 3D world. And it was all about the user experience, because it's very easy to make a bot have perfect aim.
Yeah.
It sucks playing against a bot with perfect aim, because it'll absolutely annihilate you. So how did you make it, that introduced good challenges. How do you make it have good aim, but not too good, so that you actually stood a chance playing against it?
Yeah, you still want to have fun playing the game.
Exactly. How did you make it play against you in a human enough like that it was useful for practicing for how you're going to play humans? As I said, the challenge is to make it navigate this 3D world. How do you make it identify the resources in the world that it wants to correct, like the ammunition, the health packs, the guns? And when it wants them and when it doesn't, how do you make it think about strategies like, well, I don't really need that armour, but if I get it, I deny it to the other player.
Right.
So that was the first time I really worked on AI back in 1996, doing AI for computer games for this bot that played it. And as you say, there's so much that you learn in there, both the actual technical challenges and how do you also back off some of that tech so that it's still fun to play, so that it's a good user experience and people enjoy it. Right. And again, we modelled it off Arnie. Terminator was hot at the time, so the skin in Quake could change, so there's more and more damage. The less and less it looked like Arnie, and the more it looks like Terminator.
Oh,
probably
that's
hideously
so cool.
breach of copyright.
We won't tell anyone about that part yet.
Yeah,
Very
I don't
cool.
think James Cameron's going to feel he's lost out a lot of money to me.
That's awesome.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, Nick.
Of course.